Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kryptonized. Today, different topic, but important to crypto, I believe. There is a DAO, let's say, company or type that you could create in Delaware. And now a team out of North Carolina has come up with something called the Catawba Digital Economic Zone. And we're here to talk about that because if you're starting a business, this might be an option for you. But before we do, I want to let Joseph McKinney introduce himself and tell us how he got into this, and then we'll take it from there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and it's great to be on the show. So yeah, my name is Joseph McKinney. I am the CEO of the Catawba Digital Economic Zone, the first digital economic zone in the United States. And the reason I got into this field of work is I've been in the special economic zone space for several years through our nonprofit startup societies and different research associated with that, as well as for-profit consulting. And while doing some of that for-profit consulting, I got in contact by one of my colleagues who was contacted by the tribe special economic zone team because 3 years prior to being in contact, they were already working on a special economic zone project. So, like most people in the United States, when they hear about the sovereignty of Native American tribes, they kind of roll their eyes and like, okay, yeah, sure. But in reality, it's the exact opposite. The only reason that tribes have not acted qua government is not because they don't have the legal authority to do so. It's because they don't have the financial resources, the structure, or the partners to come in to actually make it happen. That's why they've had to do these one-off versions of jurisdictional arbitrage, whether that's casinos or payday lending or cannabis, where they themselves are the company rather than being the government servicing all the other companies, making money the same way that California does, or Delaware, Wyoming. And honestly, that's the best analogy in terms of business law for sort of the legal status of tribal governments. In terms of commercial law, business regulations, and civil law, they have the same status as US states. And so what the tribe did is create a special economic zone with the same status as, let's say, Delaware or Wyoming to create laws. So started working with them and helped them structure a legal package in which they talk to their tribal citizens and tribal elders. And we essentially created a grassroots movement for a special economic zone in the United States. They used that to pass this in February of this year, creating its own commercial code. It's a regulatory body, kind of like a mixture of a regulatory body plus a Secretary of State that can register companies as well as issue regulations on securities, banking, bank chartering, fintech, digital assets, what have you. And yeah, that it's now an operating governing body, and we should be registering companies fairly shortly, and we'll have details about that pretty soon.
Well, let's get into the details. First of all, if it's acting like other states, does that mean other states have the ability to subpoena those records on the corporation or any bank accounts registered for that corporation if it's in crypto?
To the same extent that any other state has the right to subpoena corporations in other states, usually that happens if they have some sort of nexus or some of its directors have nexus there. But they don't have any more status than a state has over another state. So they have to have some sort of nexus there.
So there is some sister state law or agreement that the tribe has
No,
with the rest of the
no.
states. How would the tribe cooperate with other states if there's no sister state agreement?
Oh, they don't have to. So they can issue a subpoena if they have some sort of nexus in the state that they're physically operating. Let's say they have an office. Like, for instance, uh, many Silicon Valley companies, they have a company that's domiciled in Delaware. However, if they're doing a lot of business in the state of California, California may have a right to subpoena that company at their physical address. But ultimately, if they don't have any type of nexus, they don't have the right to subpoena. And ultimately, that's the basis of tribal sovereignty. It's similar to state. They only remove it if they voluntarily agree to remove it.
Okay, because crypto people like privacy,
Yeah.
and so if you're offering a level of privacy
Yeah.
and other states don't have the ability of breaching that privacy, I think a lot of crypto people will like it.
So we really
So
thread the needle on precisely that topic because ultimately transparency and making sure that we're all above board in terms of anti-money laundering and what have you is very important. But at the same
Yeah.
time, so is privacy. So what we do is that we KYC each of the individuals that register companies within the zone and know your business as well. But at the same time, we don't retain any of that information. We simply KYC and we don't make it public. The only information that is public about these companies is ones that those companies want to be public. So we ensure that there is compliance and that good actors are in the zone, but at the same time, we want to make sure that they have as much privacy as possible.
Okay. And is this open to anyone in the United States, or is it global?
Oh, this is global. And basically, this can be open to anyone that's not on a sanction list or a blacklist or a known criminal that's in the database of KYC. Yeah.
Yeah, most people that know me know I don't have to say this. We're not advocating any of that black hat stuff, but we do like a level of privacy, especially with governments that overreach like freaking crazy. Okay, so let's move into some of the special features of this economic zone. So, is there some tax benefits to to registering there?
So this isn't a tax play. This is a regulatory arbitrage play. If you want to go for changes to your federal tax code, you go to let's say Puerto Rico or what have you. Yeah, in fact, one of the things we recommend is that if you have a Puerto Rico entity, you have a subsidiary in the zone, so you can conduct your business, have more surety when it comes to regulations, but then be able to have the tax advantages when you're in Puerto Rico. But yeah, this is definitely not a tax haven.
Okay, and so what are the benefits of registering there versus Wyoming, registering as a DAO in Wyoming?
Yes, well, specifically DAOs or in general.
Well, just in general. I mean, it doesn't have to be a DAO, but because I know you go well beyond that. But what are the benefits? Why there and not anywhere else?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. For one, their commercial code. Their commercial code is not seen as favorably as, let's say, Delaware. And our commercial code, the way that we did it is, so there's basically a couple of organizations in the United States, usually nonprofits, that propose template laws to states for them to adopt. They're called the American Legal Institute, the Uniform Law Commission, and the American Bar Association. And normally what happens with these nonprofits is they spend a lot of resources and mental energy to develop these really good laws. But where the problem comes in is when special interests get a hold of them, they start putting a bunch of crazy stuff in there that doesn't make any sense. What we
Yes.
did is we incorporated by reference where we're just including those baseline streamlined commercial codes. And a lot of those, especially ones done by the American Legal Institute, are essentially aggregating precedent from not just the United States, but all common law jurisdiction and synthesizing them into what they call black letter rulings. And that's one of the benefits that people see of, let's say, Delaware, is because it has enormous built up case law over many years. We have that immediately baked in. That's not as much of the case with Wyoming. Another one is a recent regulation that we passed concerning the definition of digital assets. So Wyoming, this is how they became famous, is that they had their foundational definitions of digital assets. And that's really important because ultimately, if you don't have a tie-in to the existing legal system, you don't have that firm foundation to do business. However, they basically their model was kind of taking duct tape and glue because if they weren't able to change the uniform commercial code, basically the consistent financial plumbing that exists across the US states. So they had to make definitional changes within their property codes, defining digital assets as intangible property and having different types. But the problem with that is that it's not technologically agnostic, it's not simple, and it's kind of strange and idiosyncratic. However, what the Uniform Law Commission has been working on over the last 3 years, essentially a collection of lawyer monks, debating how many attorneys can fit on the head of a pin, but with perfecting
Yeah.
security transactions. They just approved their final amendments to the UCC in July, and within 30 days, the Zone Authority was the first one to approve it to govern the laws of the jurisdiction. And normally that takes 1 to 2 years. So just on that foundational baseline, we're superior. Another element is what you talked about, specifically DAOs. So we just issued a draft regulation for comment to the public, and we have a menu format. For one, we do include the Wyoming model of registering them and recognizing DAOs as LLCs. But what a lot of people have complained about is that LLCs don't provide the type of flexibility that DAOs, as their technology allows, their flexibility. And also having, registered agents and requiring that's been difficult for them. So what we did was also allow them to incorporate it as unincorporated nonprofit associations, which are the most flexible entity type available. It does have limited liability like a corporation, but it doesn't have as many statutory requirements as an LLC. So it can rely on its governing principles, which can be, according to the statute, as simple as even a verbal agreement, or in this case, it could be smart contracts if they so say, rather than having to constantly refer back to the statute. It also doesn't require a registered agent. So there's a lot more flexibility there than under the Wyoming law.
Okay. And so where do I go to court if I have a problem with the company? Let's say I'm not registered anywhere else. I'm just registered in this tribal nation state. What court system am I in?
So, like with any commercial agreement, you have the ability to have a choice of venue, and that can be anywhere you want. I mean, often with commercial dealings, you want to go to an arbitration center, or you can even go to the chancery court if you so wish. And then when you do that, the Catawba have the ability to set up a court in the case if there's any appeals to those arbitral decisions or those Delaware chancery decisions. Ultimately, they have exclusive and appellate jurisdiction. But until we have a full court arbitration center set up, basically we rely on Delaware to subsidize us.
Okay, so it would be a Delaware court unless something else is named. But in
Or if
crypto,
you,
it's always like,
it's up to the
yeah.
user essentially. Yeah.
But in crypto, you might not have an agreement with somebody and they want to sue you for whatever reason. And so they're going to have to go where? It sounds like they have to go to Delaware.
Well, yeah, or they can default to the Catawba. Ultimately, the Catawba have the ability to set up an agreement.
That's important to know about where, if there's no agreement in place, somebody decides to sue you, where it ends up in court. It would be an important thing to know. And then the laws of that state or the law of the tribe.
I would hope when you're a business and when you have an exchange or you're a fintech or if you are, selling anything of any sort, you're having some sort of agreement
There's a
between
user
the different
agreement
parties.
usually. Yeah, there's a user
Yeah.
agreement. But where would the user agreement say the Catawba Nation, or would it say Delaware, or what would I put in my
Well, you
user
could
agreement?
say, so there's the governing law and then there's a choice of venue. So you could say the
True.
governing law is the Catawba Indian Nation, Catawba Special Economic Zone, and then you can have the choice of venue be, AAA arbitration panel.
Okay. The good news about that is if you get some crazy attorneys, they have to understand the Catawba law first before they start suing. And then your jurisdiction can be anywhere, like you said.
Yeah, but the beautiful thing about the Catawba Code is those attorneys probably already know all those laws just by going to law school, because all those texts are what they use to teach attorneys to pass the bar. The American Legal Institute, the Uniform Law Commission, basically every attorney should have those books on their bookshelf anyways.
Oh, really? So this is just a regular uniform code that hasn't been bastardized by some of these states? Is that what you're saying?
There you
I'll just say it. I have somewhat of a legal background, so I think I'm following. But there's always motions. I guess you follow the procedures of whatever state court you choose or whatever venue you choose, but the laws that the judge has to go by or the jury has to go by are from the Catawba Nation. Is that correct?
Exactly. And if they do choose to appeal, then the Catawba Indian Nation will be the one appealing it.
What is the type of company you see in crypto that should absolutely registered within the Catawba Nation?
Well, first, I want to say that our ultimate goal is to not just be for Web3. Our goal is to be a general jurisdiction, to disrupt Delaware. However, like any initial company going to market, you need to have a niche. And ultimately, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in providing clarification in the space of digital assets. So basically, any company that deals with digital assets and wants to ensure they're treated under existing law, you should register. Any company that wants to set up a DAO with the maximum amount of flexibility and consideration under law, you should register. If you're setting up a stable coin, or if you're trying to form a Novo bank or a bank with digital assets, we're going to be posting regulation in that regard in the next couple of weeks and months. So basically, if you are in the fintech, digital assets, or Web3 space, and you want to use an easy digital interface to do so, and consistent laws that are recognized by attorneys and are, focused on enabling innovation rather than hampering it, you're going to want to register here.
Excellent. Okay, so Joseph, first of all, really appreciate you being on the show, talking about the Catawba Digital Economic Zone. Where do people go to register for it? I know it's not out yet, but let's say they want to get on a list, or tell us how to do that.
Yeah, you just go to catawbadigital.zone, and then you hit the pre-registration page, and then you just put in your information, and then you'll be updated shortly.
Okay, and then how do we get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can hit the contact page, and you can email me there. There's also just joseph@catawbadigital.zone.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much.
Hello, Kryptonize fans. I've got a token for you. We've had a lot of tokens come on the show. Some we like, some we don't. But we really like Tetragard. Why? Because it is a wrapped coin with PAX-G, with Ethereum, Bitcoin, and this rewards token called Quadrant. So you get it all wrapped up in kind of a one-click buy at the website below. And if you hold on to it, you get rewards that you could sell back to the Ethereum blockchain and get more Ethereum just for holding what I liken to an ETF. So again, it's Tetragard. Check it out. This is a no-brainer to invest in, especially what's going on in this world.